Hi, I'm Olly Atkins, and you're watching the Permanent Ring Press.
Hi everyone, it's Chloe with the Permanent Rain Press. Today I am so happy to be joined by Olly Atkins. How are you?
How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. And I'm so excited to chat with you about your work in Finding Her Edge on Netflix. But before we get into the show, what can you share about your background in the arts and what sparked that passion in you?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, Honestly, I've been working in the film business since my first job ever was working on set. So, totally illegally, by the way, but that's okay. um, yeah, so I've been in the business for a long time. I've been sort of never able to escape a sort of artistic career path, despite my best efforts for a period in time. And yeah, I can't really help it. It's what I love to do. It's the business I'm in, and I'm very fortunate that that's the case.
You did mention in another podcast growing up working in the film industry. Is there any specific production you can pinpoint where you kind of, were maybe working behind the scenes and you said, I really want to also be in front of the camera?
Oh, that's actually a really good question. There is one. I remember I was working on The 100, which was a sort of sci-fi TV show that shot here in Vancouver, and I was just a PA on that show. And there's this scene in it where Richard Harmon has a sort of breakdown, and I think it's called Mount Weather or something like that. But it's like this situation room, and he goes and he has this big freak out. And I remember watching that on set and seeing for the first time like the connection between that was the closest I had been on set at the time to like an actor doing their thing. So it was pretty cool to see like that connection from somebody actually performing in a moment and how it connected to the screen later and made it into a film, and witnessing like how compelling that was in real life. And it's not all movie magic. There are some things that actors do that are really, really incredible. And when you have the privilege to watch them in person, it's pretty inspiring. So that was a big one for me.
We love a good Richard Harmon shout out here. We've interviewed him a lot before, and of course,
Oh,
The
have you had him on
Hundred.
the show?
Yeah, before. Yeah, a lot.
That's
We
great.
did when he was on The Hundred and CW Mainstay. That was a fantastic show. So it's nice to kind of look back at maybe you don't think about it all the time, but moments like those that kind of catapult you into maybe, wanting to do more acting yourself. And something very cool, not film related, but in November you start as Warren in the production. This is Our Youth. So
Yes.
tell me about your experience on stage and getting to adapt this story and bring more into life with Railtown actors.
Well, This Is Our Youth is kind of like one of the greatest plays ever written in my mind. And I think Kenneth Lonergan is a total genius. That all started with, I think, one of my first scene study classes ever at Railtown, actually. I got assigned like 10 pages or something from This Is Our Youth. And I remember connecting with it so deeply because I think like Warren is this incredibly complex, like sweethearted, messy, like weird dude, and the material and the writing, specifically the dialogue, is just so fantastic and so rhythmic. And so I kind of just one night when I was like first starting out, I texted my buddy Alex Skinner, who's in the play, and was like, "We have to do this." And I sent him the script, and he had never read it before. And he, I think, like read it that night. I think he read the whole thing that night and texted me back at like 6 a.m. being like, "Dude, yes." So that's how that all got started. And then we originally started developing the play into a production before I got cast on Finding Her Edge. So we got into it, we started the process, we started looking for venues and that sort of whole thing. because we were producers on it as well, so we were putting it all together, and then had to totally step away while we were shooting, and then come back to it and find the character again and start really working on it. Because with a play like that, it's, I'm on stage for something like 2 hours straight, and it's pure dialogue. Like there's not a whole lot of like long pauses or stares into the distance or anything. Like it's mostly like New Yorkers talking fast, and the second you break that rhythm, it's off the rails. So the dialogue has to be so specific. So the prep process was really serious for that. And then we got to put on for people, and I think we did it for 6 nights, and Shanti and Alex did an incredible job, and it was just, it was pretty amazing. It was my first theater experience too, so it was really special to be able to do that play as my first one.
You really jumped right in then to the process. And yeah, I was
Yeah,
looking
it's
at it's like no, warm up period. It's like, okay, I'm gonna take a lead role. I'm gonna be involved in it in the production. And I think it was 6 shows total, including one day where you had a matinee and evening shows. So it really tests your endurance and your focus. And your director, John Murphy, he has a wealth of knowledge in theater. So how was it to collaborate with John and his vision as well? And then, of course, working with your stage partners, as you mentioned, in Alexander and Shanti.
I could have waited to answer some of that question. Yeah, I mean, John's incredible. Like, John is totally the real deal. He's kind of a legend in the Vancouver theater scene and beyond, of course. But when we started working, he was like, we're aiming for perfection, and we probably won't get there, but we are absolutely going to leave nothing on the table in terms of trying to do that. So it was pretty daunting initially, and while we were rehearsing, it was both wonderful and scary and enlightening. And working with somebody like John, the beauty is you end up a much better actor after you've done it than before you started. And I can say that it was like a really transformative experience as an actor was working with John Murphy. And then working with Alex and Shanti, they're total pros. They're awesome. They give so much. It's such a privilege to like be across the stage with them. So, and they're my friends too, so that also helps. But they really brought their characters to life, and I think we really managed to pull off something pretty special.
Do you have plans to return to the stage at all?
I it's funny when we were doing before the play, I was like, I definitely want to do theater as like a big part of my acting career. And then after we did the play, during the play, I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I want to do theater as part of my acting career because it's so scary. But now that I'm on the other side and we had such a good run, and I've digested it, and I'm more aware of what the experience was. Absolutely, I want to do more theater. I think it's like totally magical, and it's in a way it's sort of like the other half of acting in my mind. Like I grew up in film and television, so that's sort of my world. But acting on stage just does something. It's like in film and television, you're sort of sharing the dream with the people you're making it with your screen partner, with your director, with the producers, with the other cast and crew, and the audience is a little separated from the dream for a time, until it comes out. And when you do theater, the magic is the audience is sharing the dream with you. You're all there together having this sort of amalgamated experience where it's total alchemy as to what happens and what you feel in the role, and like on an intellectual level about it, just how you perceive it during and after the fact. Like it's pretty. It's hard to describe.
You do really get that feedback in real time. And that being said, I really do hope that the stage is part of your future. It's kind of interesting
Yeah,
because a
thank
lot
you.
of people start in theater, as I'm sure you know, and then, make their way to film and television. So for you, it's a bit of the opposite where you're finding, this new love of the stage, maybe after you've dabbled in film and TV as well. We will talk about one of those projects, which is Percy Jackson and the Olympians. You
Oh
appeared in
yeah.
season two as, according to IMDb, rogue demigod Augie, or a Kronos army member. And fans noticed when you were followed on Instagram by much of the lead cast, and there were theories online on who you may be playing. Did you see
Were
any
they?
of this discourse? Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
funny.
then the answer is obviously I did not see that.
Well, like, not really. I mean, I try to stay off Instagram like too much, and that's like the only social media I have. So I didn't see a ton of it, but it was pretty funny. Like, I did notice a couple comments on Instagram posts being like, "Oh, are you such and such?" and all this kind of. It was pretty funny. Um, yeah, I kind of live under a rock, so.
I think my favorite comment, like there was a bit of a little Reddit thread that someone has started, and there are a lot of Apollos being thrown out there. Not
Yeah,
sure
I
if
did
that's
see that one.
okay,
That was
that's
funny.
come up. I think my favorite comment was in response to your headshot that someone had posted, and someone said this dude can't be playing anyone other than a Greek god, which I'm
Well, that's nice. I mean, that's.
you're just like, that's funny. But that is nice, though. It's a compliment.
I guess, yeah, I'll take that, I guess.
You did get to attend the premiere in December, so really like your first taste of the fanfare for that franchise and that show. So how was that for you?
I mean, that was pretty cool. Like, that was my first big premiere as well. Um, it's a serious production, those things. The quantity of stuff going on is, like, incredible. And it was cool because I didn't actually have that much to do. Like most of the cast is like they're working. They're doing interviews. They're on the red carpet, like chatting with everybody. Like it's a serious work affair. I kind of just got to hang out and take it all in, which was great.
Tell me about your experience on set, though, and working with the cast, including many moments spent together off set. I know you've posted photos with like Dior, Beatrice, Charlie Walker, Arian. So what's it been like getting to know this group?
I mean, like it's awesome. Like they're all such fantastic people. It's really like getting to work with them on set was really cool. Because not all sets are like that, there's a lot of sets out there where it's you just show up and you do a job and it's great because you're working, but you don't really find too many friends on it. And with that, with those guys and like that show, it's like top to bottom, they're just really fantastic human beings. So it's pretty cool to get to hang out with them on set and work with them. And then, yeah, I'm lucky to call a few of them like my friends. So it's great.
How about the size and scale of the production, like the Percy Jackson
Yeah.
world? Because I mean, a lot of it is studio, but I think you're also like in the outskirts somewhere else in BC filming some of that.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Well, you're doing like the classic big BC drive for some of it. Anybody that's shot anything in Vancouver is familiar with getting on the Highway 1 and just starting your day driving 2 hours out into the middle of nowhere. Yeah, the scale of that production is pretty incredible. I've been on some big sets before, um, but to see it, like I'm a huge Percy fan, so to see it brought to life with that much care and that much production value is pretty fantastic. And for season two, there was a really big commitment to doing a lot of stuff practically as well. So a lot of the giants and everything they're 8 foot tall guys in costumes, and they built most of the sets. And so to like be able to step into that world where there's like that level of storytelling going on is pretty incredible.
It's one of those things where a lot of times I'm sure they tell actors, just imagine this is happening, but to actually build
Yeah.
that and, see it come to life must be so impressive for you as an artist. We will get into Finding Her Edge now, and for all those
Sweet.
watching, we are discussing spoilers, so please make sure you have finished the season before continuing our interview with Olly. But what can you share about your audition process and what drew you to Freddie and wanting to be a part of this project?
Well, the audition process kind of, a pretty standard audition process for the most part, with the exception being, getting a text from my agent and being like, hey, can you go film a tape of you skating in the next 2 hours? And like, so I can send it to Netflix. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. But yeah, the audition process was great. I think I found a pretty good rhythm with Freddie pretty quickly, even just off the sides for the audition. There's like quite a few things that drew me to being a part of the project. I thought Freddie was like a really fantastic character just off the page. I think there was so much room to create a life in him, and I resonated with like some parts of the script. I think most of us have been in that place when we're super young and sort of tremendously in love with somebody that you maybe aren't together with, and paired with like that sense of there's this whole other half to the story and Freddie that has to do with the competitive nature of what they do. That they're figure skaters and they're all working together but sort of competing against each other as well, and they live under the same roof. I thought it was a really, really unique story element and something that I thought there was a lot of like room to create a character within.
We'll talk about some of those character traits and details in just a bit, but I'm curious when you got the note from your team about being on skates. So, was it something where you just went to your local rink and you were like, okay, I need to skate around for a brief period of time? Like, what is your comfortability on ice skates?
Well, it's interesting because initially I thought, like, I had this totally fake memory as a kid that I was a good skater. So I was like, oh yeah, that's fine. It'll take me like 20 minutes to pick back up. I got to the rink for the first time to like tape the thing I had to send to Netflix, and I literally could not skate at all, basically. So it was pretty daunting. But, we had like some really amazing coaches and people we were working with in Brad Hopkins, and it was pretty cool to be able to engross myself in that beautiful a skill and to learn it to that degree was pretty amazing. Not that we did all the routines and everything. There's some movie magic going on there, but I thought that like the ownership of that ability was really important to Freddie as a character. So I wanted to learn as much as I humanly could in the time we had. So anytime we were on set and we were not shooting, I would try to be on the rink skating and just, I'm not going to become like a world-class ice dancer in 2 months, but I wanted to like make things as believable as possible, learn as much of the skill as I could so that I was useful to our directors and they had some flexibility in what they shot with us. And it's really fun. That's the other thing. Like skating, when you're decent at it, is super fun. It sucks when you're bad at it, but once you get a handle on it, it's pretty cool.
It's nice that you kind of took that, like you said, ownership, accountability over that role. Like you don't just want to glide by. You want to at least, get to a level where you're happy with your development. And of course, you had stunt doubles who were fantastic, a lot of them on like Canada's national team, and they
Yeah.
compete as well. What was your familiarity with the source material, and at what point into your casting and filming did you read Jennifer Icopelli's novel?
I went and got the novel as soon as I got like a callback. So I was like, because I think the turnaround on my first audition wasn't that long. So I kind of had to just like jump into it without having read the book. But as soon as I like realized I was getting a little bit further along in the process, I was like, okay, I need to go read this. And it's a great book too. I mean, Jennifer's awesome. So
Did she visit set and get to kind of interact
yeah,
with
she
the
did. She did. And she's like the loveliest human being on earth as well.
what specific elements did you draw from that source material to help you bring your Freddie O'Connell to life? And were there any other key reference points that you drew inspiration from?
Well, I try not to be too specific with what I took from the book, just because, like, by the nature of translating to screen, there's things that are going to get expanded upon, things that are going to get changed, all that sort of stuff. What I tried to take from the book, though, was I really tried to understand, like, the essence of Freddie and what drives him, what makes him the guy that he is, where he sits in terms of his competitiveness, his like love for Adriana, of course. But yeah, that was like the main thing I was focused on, was just really diving deep into it and just trying to understand him.
In this show, is he also 17 years old, or did the ages change at all?
Technically, he's 17. Yeah, I don't think it ever gets mentioned in the show, but he is 17, technically speaking.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about the ages of, especially like the girls. Like they all look decently close in age, but it might be like a couple years apart, here or
Mhm.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like thinking, was it 17? Playing an ice dancer, you talked a bit about the on ice portion, but how much research and preparation did you do with respect to learning about the sport, and how did that inform you and
Quite
your
a bit.
mindset?
Yeah, quite a bit. And I mean, like, there's the sort of Canadian pride, like Tessa Virtue, Scott Moir thing that's going on. So you gotta know a little bit. But whenever it comes to like preparing for a role or something, if there's technical things to research and understand and hold on to, like I really value that, because it's a really concrete way in to some elements of the character. And it's great when you're shooting those sequences on ice and you're trying to understand where characters are coming from, where these critical moments are in the period of a competition and that sort of thing. It's really good to know how all that stuff works. Plus, like, to Freddie and Adriana and all the, like, this is their whole world, right? So to embody them well, I think you kind of, I felt at least that I had to understand a lot of those things.
And it's really important for like the mental psyche because as you mentioned, like a lot of these skaters, there's many skaters, but it is a kind of a tight-knit community and you are
Mhm.
training with your competitors and your friends. So it's kind of separating that personal and professional boundaries at
Yeah.
times. Did you consider Freddie's path to figure skating, starting from hockey, as he mentions, to Brayden, and what motivates Freddie as an athlete? Like, why do you think he skates and competes?
I think there's like a musical spiritual side to it that Freddie really connects to, because it is competitive, but it also is dance. It is a really romantic sort of sport. So I think that really resonates with Freddie. And then I think he's also like a pretty pure competitor. He didn't have a lot of things going on when he was younger. He had a pretty fractured family life. Um, and I think it was really something for him to, like, a concrete thing that he could dive into and hold on to as a North Star for him. So he loves ice dancing, and it speaks to his soul. But I think he also really is a pretty diehard competitor as well.
That's so well said. And I'm not sure if you thought about this, but when I was watching the show, the term charity case was mentioned a couple of times. And I
Hmm.
kind of was thinking like maybe he has no choice but to be a good, dependable male partner, to also be desirable to others. Like he was taken in by the Russo family and then by Riley and her parents, who have footed much of, the funding for their partnership. And so he is very reliant on like his on-ice abilities because he doesn't have that personal funding that a lot of others have in this
Yeah.
competitive sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Freddie has no safety net. There's no backup plan for him, which I think speaks a little bit to his grace that he doesn't sort of. He never really talks about that, but yeah, he doesn't have any like. There's nowhere to go for Freddie, and I think that really, with his relationship with Riley, that's a big part of it. Not that he's like using Riley as this sort of crutch or like, relying on her too much, but he's certainly aware of just what her family has done for him and how much of his life revolves around their support.
You alluded to it with his family. So, a large part of Freddie's story in the second half of the season is connected to his absent mother, who we get to meet in their complicated relationship. How does his family life weigh on and affect him on a daily basis?
I think a lot. I think it's a pretty fundamental core part of Freddie's being. Because he basically, in a lot of ways, he essentially grew up without a family. And in a very transient, sort of transactional world where it's like, if you want to live, like if you want to stay with your friends and these people who have become your family in the ice dancing world, like you have to compete, you have to perform, you have to live up to these expectations. So Freddie has no real foundation, and I think for a while he thought he found it in the Russo house, but yeah, it's pretty tough. It's really the sort of through line of Freddie's entire existence is his family or lack thereof.
He definitely missed out on a lot when he was younger. It's addressed that his mom was drinking a lot. I'm not sure if it was ever mentioned about his father, or maybe you talked about that with the creative team that maybe you don't want to share now in case there's like a season
Yeah, that's
two
going to
and it
remain a
gets
mystery for now.
unearthed. But it's interesting to think about, what he missed out on with that stability, that care, and that comfort. Like you mentioned, thinking he found it in the Russos. We are not witness to much of Freddie and Adriana's past partnership on ice
Mhm.
and romantically, although when you think about their age, they were 15 years old. But how did you and Madeline really work together to build that chemistry and history? Like, did you discuss their relationship and what they had before he was forced to leave?
Absolutely. I think some of it is just, we got to set and we were pretty much on the same page about that in terms of, I think most people have had that sort of young love. Not everybody, but some people have had that sort of thing where you fall for somebody and they become your whole world, you know? And I think we both sort of unspokenly, at first anyways, like just understood that was their connection. And their whole life revolved around each other for some pretty formative years where, it was, they were competing together, they were living together, they loved each other. And maybe they didn't know right away exactly what that meant, because when you're 14 or 15, like that's that's new territory for sure. But we both sort of knew that that's the place that they were coming from.
And there are some nice callbacks, like with the snow globe and the carousel, to kind of, paint a bit of a picture of, these moments that they both hold sacred. Can you expand on the feelings that he held towards Adriana, her family, and Team Russo?
Mm.
Like the impact of his departure on his life, having to find, or maybe Riley and her parents sought him out, but being back seemed to be more difficult than he initially imagined.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, well, I think the fundamental thing that was so hard for Freddie about basically getting kicked out of the Russo house, which is what happened, is Freddie's never had anybody there for him that was supposed to be there for him. You know, his dad's gone. His mom is not there in the proper sense, so to speak. Um, and then he thinks he may have found a place in a family with Adriana and the Russos, and then that gets pulled out from under him as well, for circumstances outside of his control too. Like he didn't fall short performing. He didn't screw up his relationship with Adriana. He didn't behave in any kind of way that would warrant this. But you know, suddenly he's a young kid and he has no home and no family once again. So I think Freddie comes back to the Russo house thinking that he's ready to take it on. I think in some ways he is. I think he's, you know, gone away and grown up quite a bit into somebody that can maybe deal with the feeling of betrayal that you get from, you know, like Papa Russo. But I think what he's not ready for is just the visceral sensation of seeing Adriana again and feeling that love all just rush back. And it rushes back so quickly because it truthfully never left. But yeah, it's a pretty intense experience. So I think he thinks he's really ready to deal with it and just is not at all.
I think the catalyst is also throwing Brayden in the picture, obviously. Like maybe if Adriana wasn't competing, then it wouldn't have had the same effect. He wouldn't be seeing her as much as when he sees her with a new partner. But I have to, you know, go through the fact that I know it wasn't intentional, but he begins to like disrespect and dismiss Riley so much, like all the daggers that you are throwing as Freddie towards Brigiana. Like, did that ever kind of get amusing to you? Because there's just so many intense stares.
Yeah, there's a lot of intense stares. Freddie kind of never really says what he feels, which is very interesting. So intense stares are kind of like the language of Freddie in a way. But that one's kind of hard to explain in terms of like the acting choices involved in that because I was just kind of going with what I felt on a lot of those.
I feel like that's not a bad, like you follow your gut, right? In that moment, you're your
Yeah.
character, you're feeling like all these things that you thought maybe you suppressed or you got over some time ago. But like you said, it's all rushing back. Is there any specific moment in your eyes in season one, like that we get to see on screen, where you think Freddie's romantic feelings for Adriana were reignited? Like, and ultimately, what does he admire
Oh,
about and see in her?
yeah, right away. Like, I think the second Freddy sees her, as soon as he's back in the house, it's like time never stopped, you know? Yeah. I think it's even more so than that. It's like, I don't think Freddy falls in love with Adriana again. I think he never stopped being in love with Adriana. I think he sort of forced himself to put those feelings aside to cope with the fact that he had to leave the house and go live a different life. But I think they come rushing back right away. And I think you were asking what Freddie admires in Adriana. I think he admires everything about Adriana. I think he loves her as a human being. I think he's totally charmed by her as well in all her little details. And I think that he enormously respects her as a competitor and a human being. Because it's not like Adriana doesn't just it's not like life is super easy for Adriana either. She lost her mom. She's the weight of responsibility of the house is falling on her shoulders. And I think Freddie knows kind of what that feels like better than anybody to lose the people that are close to you and to have that feeling of the walls closing in. So I think he tremendously admires and respects like every aspect of who she is and what she does.
And to come back after 2 years, he should know is no easy feat. So I know he mentions her, her tenacious. She's a fighter. There's this interesting shot I'm sure you've seen the season by now, but of his hand in episode 4 after he spins Adriana into the Russo ring dance circle at qualifiers. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, I thought that maybe that could have been like another moment. Like, there was like this nervous twitch, like this electric feeling that he had. What did you think of that shot?
It's an interesting shot. That was not my idea. That was all Jackie, our director for that episode. And I had no idea what was going on with that initially. That had to be explained to me about like, oh no, people will go crazy for this if you do like the hand, and I was like, what? I don't. I mean, like in retrospect, it's a really lovely moment, and it's sort of it does connect narratively. You know, it's the sensation of somebody that you care for deeply and are totally in love with touching your skin is pretty insane. So I think he's just it's like he's feeling the ghost of their past holding his hand in that moment, you know?
Which was your favorite scene to film and why?
That's hard. That's a terrible question. Like it's a great question, but it's like that's a hard question to answer. I have like a lot of really favorite scenes. There's a whole sequence that we shot with in the Russo rink where I'm like locking up the building with Brayden. That was super fun because it was just like a whole day of me and Kale sort of ad-libbing and messing around, which was really cool. But there's also some really, really wonderful scenes with Maddie that were incredible to shoot. There's this one scene in the bedroom that we shot in basically just like big 8 or 10 minute takes, sort of like very theatrically actually. And those were really cool from like an actor's perspective and from a character perspective. There's a lot of big changes that happen in the scene. I know this is coming out theoretically after, but I'm trying not to give away too much. But yeah, that was a really, really incredible scene to shoot. But it's hard to pick. It really is.
I mean, you and Freddie were a key part of so many scenes. So I imagine when you're running it back, you're going like, oh, there's one in this episode, there's one in this episode.
For
Tell
sure.
me
And there's one
about,
with like every character too.
yeah, because you really got to share the screen with so many people. Tell me about Freddie's conversation and kiss with Elise to end episode 5. Like, what
Right.
led up to that moment? Keeping in mind that she is Adriana's sister and, you know, all these feelings that he clearly has for Adriana. How did that moment come to be?
Well, you know, I think there's Freddie is tremendously controlled and contained, and I think he has a really, really hard time expressing himself because I think he feels a responsibility to protect other people and to not put weight on their shoulders that he could bear himself. So I think there's a lot going on in that moment, in that he has a tremendous amount of admiration and love for Eddie's sister, as well as I think that when it comes to Elise, like she's like Adriana in a lot of ways, and I think in Freddie being totally unable to express his feelings for Adriana and be with Adriana, and he has all this stuff thrown in his face constantly, all this Brayden stuff going on, all this conflict, all this drama within the family and everything, and he's so contained, and that's where that moment is where it just sort of spills out into his life. And yeah, it's a complicated scene to sort of break down because of how much there is going on in it. But I think it's such a good scene.
In episode 7, Freddie has an emotional outburst towards his mother at practice. Take me through preparing for and filming that scene and, you know,
Mm,
again, finding those really bottled up emotions that come spilling out.
yeah, that's a hard scene to film. It like in the best way though. That's the scene. You know, if there was like one scene where I was initially breaking down all the episodes. That's the one that gets the big circle, and that you like are very excited for, but you fear coming up on the schedule. I mean, you know, Freddie's relationship with his mom is so complicated because she really does love him, and he really does love her, but she's not really there for him like she's supposed to be, and that he wishes that she was. So when she comes back into his life, she's trying to sort of force his way into his life. Like, that's never been good before. And he's in this precarious situation with Adriana, and the family, and the sort of state of his relationship with Riley, where it's really complicated. Everything's sort of on a knife edge, and you're coming up to this big competition. This is not the time for Freddie's mom's mess to come back into his life. So it's all this frustration that boils over. It's his love for her that he can't express. It's this sort of tragedy of the mother that he wished that she was, and that he knows she could be, but she isn't. And then everything else, this sort of more like selfish reasons, but like that are, you know, that need all these things that need his attention, that aren't his mom coming in and screwing everything up again, you know? So it's a lot. And to film it, I mean, there's all that preparation, and there's all that work you do from a character side, and then there's all the technique stuff, the like sort of nerd actor stuff where you're, you know, breath work, sort of weaponizing your imagination to try and get yourself to a place where all these things come through authentically, but in a sort of directed manner. It's hard to explain something like that, because if you do it, at least if I do it really right, it is like a genuine freak out. You know, like it really is a loss of control where all these emotions spill over for real. So it seems like that is tough to film, but it's pretty awesome to do.
Well, I hope it was rewarding for you in an acting standpoint. You played that so well.
Oh, for sure.
I believe it was opposite. Was it Marie?
Yes, yeah.
Ward as Allison, but you felt the pain for both mom and son in that moment, you know, when you said you don't get to ruin this for me, not like you ruin everything else. Like, you could see how much those words hurt her, but luckily they do have a bit of a reconciliation later on.
Yeah, thankfully.
Wouldn't it be
That would have been
so
brutal.
terrible to carry that to Worlds, right? And what other turmoil would that have caused? But on the side of Freddie and Adriana, they do resume their friendship. They clear the air mostly off screen, and they share that intimate moment that I think you referenced in after their on ice collision, which was very scary, I have to say, to kind of watch that happen. But how was that intimate scene for you to film with Madeline?
It's pretty awesome. I mean, those are also like, that's the sort of other side of the spectrum to a scene like the one with my mom, where it's all the same place you sort of try to get to from an immersion of self, but in a really like loving, vulnerable sort of way. So that was wonderful, and you know, Maddie was such a great scene partner in that, and it was a very cool scene to film.
It was very like tender between the two of you, and if you're comfortable sharing a bit of a side question, but can I ask about the rose tattoo you have on your rib cage, because we got to see that a couple of times, and is there a story behind it?
Not really. It's my real tattoo. So
I kind of figured that, like, because it wasn't reference for like Freddie having like this
no,
piece,
not
so
at
I
all.
was like, oh, I'm guessing.
No, it was just, you know, it's my real tattoo, and I sort of thought it kind of fit his character. It gives a little bit of like, when did Freddie get that sort of thing? And in the context of his character, I kind of like it because, you know, the traditional thing you give ice dancers after a skate is roses, right? So I thought that was kind of nice. And then this tattoo is like there's not a whole lot of story behind it. I got it when I was like 18 and I thought it was cool. So
It is
it
an
hurt like
elegant,
crazy
it
too.
is an
But
elegant piece, but I like that,
thank you.
that you draw a little bit of a parallel to your character. And with Ice Dance, I have to say I loved the song that Freddie and Riley skated to, Turning Page by
Yeah,
Sleeping at Last. I feel like if you know ice dancing now, a lot of it is a bit more campy. So I really
totally.
like the elegant piece that I mean, I know that you had the stunt doubles doing the majority of the routine, but you did get to go on ice and kind of do some of it, at least the beginning and the end.
Yeah, totally. Um, I mean, the song is fantastic, and when you think about it in the context of Adriana watching on as that song plays, and she thinks about what could have been, in a way, it's pretty tragic in a really sweet way. Um, it's pretty cool. That's something that makes it really easy to get into a moment is when you have some beautiful music like that, and you get to go do the start of a world class ice dancing routine is pretty awesome.
Freddie feels betrayed over Adriana's fake relationship with Brayden when he finds out, but Riley she kind of rationalizes their actions and he and Adriana reunite after Worlds. Why did he choose to forgive her and ultimately give their relationship a second chance?
I don't really think there was any world where Freddie wasn't going to forgive her. You know, I think ultimately he understands what she was doing. I think he doesn't particularly respect it because it's not something that he would do. I think just after he has time to think about it, he sort of like comes to understand what she was doing and comes to like appreciate, the weight that's on her shoulders with the fate of the rink and everything sort of in the balance. That's in the grand scheme of things, like it's a pretty small sacrifice to make in terms of morality, so to speak. But also, I think when Freddie is initially so offended by it, I think a big part of that is just his feelings for Adriana and the idea that she would be willing to sort of sacrifice his feelings to do it. I think he really struggles with, and I think he just comes to grips with that later on.
Freddie and Brayden spend considerable time together across the season, finding a bit of an understanding about each other. How would you describe their season-long arc and getting to play off
Mm.
of Kale in your scenes?
Well, Kale is super fun to do scenes with because, first of all, he's like a fantastic actor, and secondly, by the second or third week of production, we were pretty good friends, and we had a pretty good repertoire of how we approached scenes together. And I think that their character arc is really interesting because the truth is, Freddie and Brayden are not that different. Um, they both come from pretty messed up homes. They both don't really have families in the sense that most people would use that word. And they both have pretty high expectations for themselves and what they're trying to accomplish in the world. I think the difference is between Brayden and Freddie is sort of how they deal with exactly like everything that they've gone through. So I think I don't want to speak for Kale because I'm sure he'll have an answer for this too. So I won't put words in his mouth. But Freddie responds to the pressures that are put on him by and the experiences that he had as a kid, which is like he never wants to need. He doesn't want to need anything from anyone in the sense of he never wants to burden other people with what he has going on. And I don't think Brayden responds necessarily the same way, but the result of that, I think, is that there is an underlying respect between Brayden and Freddie in terms of their competitive nature, and also it's not. There's like one scene that sort of they broach it a little bit, but they don't. but I think that there is an understanding. There is an underlying level of understanding between them, that they come from a similar world and that they probably have similar experiences and sort of traumas that have shaped them as kids, you know?
There's definitely like that confrontational nature that Brayden has that Freddie is like the complete opposite. But you mentioned like, they have a bit of that broing they at the hockey rink is where they kind
Yeah.
of, have that nice moment. But unfortunately, it kind of sours by the end of the season, obviously. Freddie
Mhm.
catches Brayden walking out. What are you doing? And it's probably, back to square zero or square one at that point for maybe the respect that he had kind of built up. What are Freddie's immediate thoughts at the end of the season when he and Adriana walk in on Riley and Brayden practicing and their new partnership under voltage?
I think that's pretty complicated because I think in one sense, Freddie's feels a great like it's pretty tough to he really does seriously care about Riley, and so to sort of switch partners is kind of, I think there's it's a little morally dubious in Freddie's world. I think he's very excited to be skating with Adriana again. I think he's excited to be competing with Brayden again because I think he's second season. I think if it comes to be, of course, I think he's sort of. I'll just speak to that moment in that room, which is, I think in that moment in that room, he's a little bit out for blood for Brayden, because he's got his partner back, and he's competing at a pretty high level at that point. So I think he's pretty excited to sort of put the gloves on and get to work from a competitive standpoint. And then I think there's a confidence in Freddie after all of this has happened, and he's gone through all the experiences that he had leading up to it, and despite this sort of uncertainty of where things lie with Brayden, with Riley, with having Adriana as a partner again after not dancing with her for years, I think there's just a sensation of he's ready. He's not exactly sure where everything's going to end up, but he's ready for it.
For sure. And on that note, if there is a second season, like you said, fingers crossed, but is there anything specific that you would hope to explore with Freddie, his life, and maybe dynamics, relationships with any other characters? And why would you hope to bring that to screen?
Mm. I think one aspect of Freddie that I'd really like to explore, if we're so lucky to get a season two, would be Freddie's competitive nature, because it's of course like it's there in the sense that Freddie is like clearly a very talented skater because he has to be to compete at that level, but you don't necessarily see it that much. And I would love to see Freddie, now that he has his partner back and he's ready to go, to explore that aspect of Freddie's mentality. In terms of relationships with other characters, that's a hard answer because that also comes down to like the actor in me, where I'm like, there's so many talented people on our show where I'm like, there's all these characters that I think are very interesting for Freddie to explore further relationships with, but there's also like a bunch of really awesome people that I want to do more scenes with. So that's tough. I think there's some really interesting stuff to explore there with Elise. I think there's some really interesting stuff to explore with Will, and there's some serious, the guy kicked him out of the house when he was a kid for being short. Like that's pretty tough, and is now my my coach, and my girlfriend's dad. So there's a lot of drama in there, but I have no idea what Jeff is planning. We'll see. There's some very fun stuff that you could do.
For sure. And I feel like, it's not all sunshines and rainbows. So definitely like Freddie and Adriana's partnership, it would look different now than it did 2 years ago. So kind of exploring what it's like to get back and skating together. And I love the note about his, competitive edge and spirit because he was a little too protective over Adriana's interests in season one, I feel, over his own and others. Do you have a favorite memory from set and working with the cast that you can share?
I mean, there's like a million. I'm so fortunate to be on that set and working with everybody. Like we have this one sequence in the bus that's really cool when we're on our way to the competition. And that was really cool because we're all stuck on a bus for like 6 hours and just messing around and playing music and that sort of thing. But I don't know. I would really struggle to find a singular moment because there was so many incredible ones.
You did get to go to France for episode 8 for World. So, I mean, what was that
Yeah.
experience like?
I mean, that was kind of a dream come true. I've always wanted to shoot abroad, and to shoot in the heart of Paris in Montmartre was pretty incredible. Like it's so surreal. It's hard to describe, and hopefully, I get more opportunities to do stuff like that in the future as an actor. But to just have the opportunity to do it on this show was like such a privilege, and uh, it's like everything you would hope it to be. You know.
You worked with an intimacy coordinator, Matea Kennedy. Tell me about working with Matea in season one for your scenes and given your experience, the importance of this role in productions.
Well, I think Matea was absolutely lovely. She was fantastic to work with and be with on set. I think intimacy coordinators are important because, from an actor's perspective, the nice thing about an intimacy coordinator is it just takes the question marks out of the way, in the sense of where you know exactly where your boundaries are in a scene and everybody's on the same page, and there's this sort of natural comfortability that just gets built in from having them present on set. Um, yeah, it's at this point it's a pretty standard role in the film business, so it's nice to have for sure.
How was your experience working with your showrunner, Jeff Norton, your directors, and the creative team? Like, did you adapt to their working style and was it very collaborative on set?
For sure, it was super collaborative. Jeff is amazing. Shamim is amazing. Jackie's amazing. Gregor, our director of photography, is amazing. Brad, Nigel, our camera operators are fantastic. Like, I this is one of my bigger roles, so it's really really cool to be able to like spend a lot of time with people, get to know their working style, get to know what they like, what they don't like. Establishing like a level of communication where you are speaking technically and sort of dreaming creatively, so it was fantastic, and both our directors are amazing, and I'm so grateful to have worked with both of them. Jeff is just the best. So it's I don't know, they're all fantastic, and they certainly enabled me as an actor to do my best and bring my voice to the role, and I'm so grateful that they like entrusted me with Freddie throughout this process, and that I got to play and explore and do as much as I did.
Amazing. It's always so nice to feel encouraged as a part of the team. I have two more questions for you. A bit of a nod to the show title and its namesake, but how do you find your edge as an artist in the entertainment industry? How do you maintain your passion for your craft and grow while achieving success and personal fulfillment?
I think I always want to be scared, or not scared, but like anything that I do, I want to feel like I'm pushing myself and I'm stretching myself into a new exploration. I think it's really easy to get comfortable in the world, and particularly as an artist, because you create so much of the world around yourself, and you're sort of shaping your own reality in terms of your creative work. I think to pursue things that you fear and to be pushing yourself in every aspect. Like that's a big thing for me, and that I guess that's does that count as finding my edge? I don't know, but like that's sort of like finding. I think creatively, to phrase it like more eloquently, I think finding your edge is creatively is like you always want to be finding your edge. You always want to be pushing yourself to find those scenes and those moments that scare you and chase them even harder and yeah, just bring yourself to the edge of what you can do every time. I think that's the cool part.
Pushing yourself to your limits. I like that answer. And something you said before, getting into acting, you called it an insatiable beast. So just, I guess for you also like learning to manage your emotions and expectations with every new audition and every new project.
Well, here's the thing. Emotions are awesome. Like the incredible part about acting is that it rewards all these things that are like in daily life you sort of don't get to all these parts of the human experience that in daily life you don't get to experience that you are not rewarded, you know, anger, fear, love, full expressions of joy. All these things are sort of the world really tries to sort of quiet you down and fit you in a place. And the beauty of acting is that not only are these things acceptable on stage or in front of a camera, they everyone they're rewarded. You want more from them. Yeah, it's an insatiable beast, but like I'm happy to feed it. Do you know what I mean? And every role, the cool part is like, yeah, you do a million auditions and you don't get a call back for a lot of them, and it can be this sort of really like if you particularly value your ego, this is like not a good business to get into, despite what it looks like from the outside. But if you approach it from the perspective of like, I get to create a new character, I get to create a new life, I get to share a dream with like every different script and creative team that you work with and everything. It's amazing. There's no other job like it where you get to do so many different things and you get to explore so many different aspects of our human experience and our creative ability.
So beautifully said. I have one more
I don't
question.
know about that, but thank you.
Our signature question, if you could be any ice cream flavor, which would you be and why?
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't know, chocolate's pretty good. Mint chocolate chip is good too, but I'm sure that will cause division. There's some people who think it's like toothpaste. But yeah, I don't know. I'll go with chocolate. That sounds good.
Classic. It's never fails. That's fantastic, Ollie. It's been so nice to chat with you about your work in finding her edge. I really appreciate you taking the time to discuss more about your time on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a total pleasure.
I hope we get to catch up in the future, but until then, for all those watching, make sure to catch Ollie as Freddie O'Connell in Finding Her Edge. Season 1 is out now on Netflix, and we will see you next time.
See you later.